Hi, my name is Shelby. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to share with you all of my summer reading recommendations. Growing up, I have such fond memories of going to the library with my mom and my siblings during the summer especially, and signing up for those summer reading programs. Those are some of my favorite memories of my childhood, growing up, spending the summer deep in a book. And obviously I read a lot more all throughout the year than I did when I was younger, but there's still something special to have summer reading goals. And I have several books that I want to share with you today that I think would be perfect for your summer reading plans. I think that these would be perfect beach reads, vacation reads, or just spending the day at home. So without further ado, let's talk about my summer reading recommendations. Alright, the first category that I will be sharing with you guys today is romance. I have 3 romance recommendations for you. These are contemporary romance, and all of these are books that I have really enjoyed and I think would just be perfect for somebody wanting to spend the summer reading something that is just going to make them happy. So the first one I will share with you is People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. This is a story where we are following our characters Poppy and Alex. And Poppy is a social media influencer. She gets sent on these luxury vacations where she has to basically write articles and make social media posts based on her experiences. She and Alex have been friends for several years, and she usually takes him with her on the trips. But they are not talking with each other now, and this story goes back and forth between the past and the present, where you will eventually figure out why they aren't speaking to each other, and it really is just so much fun. This is the perfect rom-com. This is perfect for vacation. Obviously, vacation's in the name, so it's just a great, quick, entertaining, funny read for the summer. The next book I'm going to be sharing with you is Funny Story by Emily Henry. This is her newest release and honestly might be one of my favorites. Like the title suggests, this is a funny story. I was laughing out loud in several places with this book. We're going to follow Daphne and Miles in this story. Both of them are experiencing breakup and they have opportunity to confide in each other. They form a genuine friendship before they even start liking each other, and it's just the sweetest story. I personally resonated with a lot of what Daphne and Miles were saying as they navigated real life crisis situations that they had to walk through. I really appreciated the genuine character development in this book, and I recommend this as a perfect summer read. Next on the list of perfect summer books that I recommend for your summer reading plans is Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. I really adored this book. I read this at the beginning of last summer. We are following Brianna and Jacob. They both are ER doctors, and Jacob struggles with anxiety a lot, so there's a lot of talk about anxiety, and I have talked with people in real life who I know that struggle with it, and they said that the way anxiety is described in this is so accurate, but not in like a scary way. It just is very eye-opening for someone who doesn't necessarily struggle with this in a chronic way. I really appreciated the conversation that they had around anxiety in this book. Not to mention, Jacob and Brianna are just so cute together. I love their relationship so much. I think they're adorable. There's a little bit of fake dating going on in this, so if you love fake dating, this one is for you. And I think that this would just be perfect as a summer read. Next, I want to talk briefly about fantasy. I've only got one fantasy recommendation in here. You've probably seen this all over the internet. The series has taken the internet by storm, and that is A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. I'm not exactly sure which one it is, but this is the first in a series. There are 5 books in the series. I personally am on book 3, so I have not finished the whole series, but what I will say, coming from somebody who is not a fantasy reader, is that if fantasy is new to you, this is a really great way to get started. This is a romantasy, meaning fantasy world, but it's a romance story. You also have political intrigue and war and creatures that are not human, and a really great story that's full of twists and turns, and you really just begin to care for the characters in this book. This is a loose retelling of Beauty and the Beast. I really enjoyed this and was surprised at how much I enjoyed it. Again, coming from someone who does not read a lot of fantasy, that's something that I would like to work on this year. I have plans for that, which maybe that will be a video coming out soon. Anyways, I recommend this for the summer. if you love a series and you like staying in one world for a long time, I recommend picking this up because it's easy to get into. There's 5 books, so you could literally binge out a whole series this summer if you wanted. I really recommend this for your summer reading. The next category that I will be sharing with you is literary, and these books are not typically books that I would pick up on a normal basis. Literary fiction is not my genre. I appreciate literary fiction when I read it, depending on the type of literary fiction that it is. But regardless, I have 2 books that I've read that I have rated 5 stars that I think will be perfect for you for your summer reading plans. The first one is Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. This came out several years ago, and there's actually a movie about it. This is following a girl, her name is Kaya. She's growing up in the marsh, and she struggles a lot with family things. If you're triggered by abandonment or abuse, there's a little bit of that talk in here, but in my opinion, it was not super graphic in a way that deterred me from the book. It wasn't entirely about that. It's just part of Kaya's story. She basically grows up all on her own with no one to help. She has to grow up really fast at the age of just a really young girl. It's her navigating life, living in the marsh, fending for herself, having to catch her own food and all these things. This is a very poetic book. It describes nature so well, and that's one of the reasons, or really the reason, that I really enjoyed this book. Every few chapters, there's also a present day timeline where we are trying to figure out who murdered a man that is a character in this book. So it goes back and forth between this lyrical prose of Kaya navigating life on her own while she's living in the marsh. There's tons of talk about nature and natural science and all of those types of things that really just felt so magical to me. And then we're also having this timeline of like there's a murder going on, but it's not really the main story. It's a very unique book, and I really recommend this for your summer reading plans. The next book I will talk about is Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is the first Taylor Jenkins Reid book that I have ever read, and I flew through this book. This is taking place in Malibu in California, and it follows the sons and daughters of a famous musician as they navigate being siblings with the absence of their father and the absence of their mother. There's a past timeline where it talks about their parents' story, and then the present timeline where it talks about their story as siblings, and I was just so intrigued by this. I talked a little bit in my top 12 books about Daisy Jones and the Six, which I would also recommend. In that video, I said I don't particularly like reading books that are about music. If somebody told me this is about music, I would probably not pick it up. This one is not as much about music as it is about what's it like being the sibling of somebody that's famous but absent. And I just loved it so much. It was an emotional story, but not too heavy of a way, and I think that this is a great summer read. All right, the next category, and potentially the biggest category, is thrillers and mysteries, and I think that I am one of those people that really love a thriller in the summer. I don't know what it is. It could be set in the winter in like some other country, but something about a fast-paced thriller in the summer, laying by the beach, laying by the pool, it just hits. And so I've got several recommendations for you that I'm really excited to talk about. The first 2 books that I will recommend are Dark Matter and Recursion by Blake Crouch. Dark Matter follows Jason. He is on his way home one day when he is abducted, and he wakes up. Everyone is saying, you came back, and he doesn't know why he came back or from where he came back. And he goes home, his wife doesn't recognize him, and his child doesn't exist. And so I can't say much more without spoiling this book for you, but you basically are just thrown into this extremely fast-paced story. It's technically sci-fi, but it leans more thriller, and it is so intriguing. I don't know what I would give to be able to read this book for the first time again. I really enjoyed my experience, and I have plans to reread this, but I've got to give it enough time so that I forget some details first. Recursion is one of those books that I read in probably a day and a half. It is 320 something pages, so not terribly long. So we're following Barry. Basically, Barry and Helena, trying to figure out why people experiencing certain memories is driving them to the big S word that I'm not going to say in case it flags me, okay? It sounds kind of depressing, but it's really not as depressing as it sounds. Basically, they figure out that there's this loop where when you remember something, you can go back in time. It's like time traveling, but through your memories, which sounds so crazy and mind-boggling, and that's because it is. But Blake Crouch makes it so completely intriguing. This is again a science fiction. Dark matter and recursion are so good and highly rated in my mind, and I would love to reread these at a time when I've forgotten some details. If you are looking for a fast-paced book for your summer reading plans and you want your mind to just be completely blown, I really recommend both of these. Okay, my next recommendation is actually a recent read, and that is The Reappearance of Rachel Price by Holly Jackson. This follows our main character, Belle. Her mother, Rachel Price, disappeared several years ago, and they are filming a Netflix documentary that is covering this true crime event. During the filming of this documentary, Rachel reappears, and we go on a journey trying to figure out where she was, what happened to her, who did this to her, etc. This is almost a perfect thriller to me because there are slow-paced elements that make you just want to keep turning the pages because it's obviously setting you up for a really fast-paced moment. And then there are some moments that are so fast-paced that you're just sitting there like biting your nails because you're so into the story. There were some moments that were spooky where I was like, I don't know if I want to turn the lights off at night. And it just gave me all of the good thriller vibes that I'm looking for, especially in the summer, without it being too creepy or too icky. The next thriller I'm going to recommend to you is The Kind Worth Killing by Peter Swanson. This was my first Peter Swanson book. I know that he's written several thrillers and I've read a few of them, but this one is so good. It follows Ted and Lily. Basically, they meet in an airport and Ted confesses to Lily that he wants to kill his wife, which morally gray here, okay? This is not the real world. Do I condone this in real life? Absolutely not. But as a thriller, it is very twisty and a little bit dark, and it follows like a story format. I feel like some thrillers are past, present, and it's just kind of blips of time, but you're actually following like every step of the process with him. He tells Lily that he wants to kill his wife in the airport, and then Lily says that she wants to help him. And he's like, wait a second. What? I was kind of joking. So they become friends, and you're following the story as they are trying to go on this mission that is very morally gray. This book had me with my jaw on the floor several times, and I really want to reread this because I've forgotten some details, but I remember just thinking like, how in the world did he write this? This was so good. If this is not a movie, I really think this would be a great movie. I think that there's a sequel to it. Yeah, there's a sequel. So I recommend this for your summer reading if you want your jaw on the floor. The next book is by a popular author, but I don't hear people talking about this one as much. That is The Woman in Cabin 10 by Ruth Ware. This follows a main character by the name of Lo Blacklock. She's a journalist, and she gets sent on an all-expenses paid cruise, and she basically has to go and write a review of this cruise. It's kind of similar in that regard to People We Meet on Vacation, but this is clearly a thriller. So she goes on this cruise, she gets into her cabin, she's enjoying herself, and then one day she overhears somebody being thrown overboard, and she's like, what the heck? What's going on? She's trying to figure out what's going on, and nobody is helping her. Everyone's denying that everything happened. She's basically on her own trying to figure out who was it that even fell overboard, who's missing from the ship, who did it, all these things. This is a fast-paced thriller, and because it takes place on a cruise, that is why I recommend it for the summer. I love the water on the cover of this book. It just gives great summer vibes, and I could not recommend it enough for your summer reading. Okay, the last book in the thriller mystery category is The Institute by Stephen King. And a lot of people who are huge Stephen King fans did not love this book, but I really liked it. We are following a kid named Luke. his parents are killed in the middle of the night and he is taken to this place called the Institute. He wakes up and he has no idea where he is. He's trying to figure it out. Turns out there's a bunch of other kids there and maybe some of them have abilities. We're not entirely sure. It's definitely giving secret government facility vibes. It's kind of like a sci-fi, but it's a thriller because you're in the perspective of this kid who has no idea what's going on and he's trying just to navigate how to live in this place where he doesn't even know where he is or what happened to his parents. I really, really enjoyed this, and if it's not a movie, I would love for it to be a movie. The next category that I would like to talk to you about is classics, which you might not consider typical recommendations for the summer, but if you love just stories and writing and you like the classic vibe, I think that this might be for you. The first one I will recommend is Anne of Green Gables by L.M. Montgomery. Obviously, we are following Anne. She is an orphan and she gets adopted by Matthew and his sister Marilla, and when she gets brought to the house, Marilla is like, oh, it's not a boy. They were thinking that they were going to get a boy and it turns out to be a girl. She basically convinces them to let her stay, and it's just her navigating life from being an orphan and being in a really hard environment to living in Prince Edward Island where it is beautiful, and the descriptions of nature and seasons and all those things are just incredible in this book, and it's perfect for just wanting a cute cozy story that makes you feel good. The next book in the classics category is Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. Obviously, this is a mystery thriller, but I put it in the classics category because it's written by Agatha Christie herself. I grew up reading Agatha Christie all through high school and maybe even middle school because I loved mysteries, but I wanted something a little bit more up there than Nancy Drew. And Then There Were None was one of the first ones I read, and I love this book. I recently reread it for the first time as an adult and was just blown away by the writing. Basically, there are a bunch of people that were invited to this mansion island for a vacation, and they show up and then they start dying off one by one, and there's no one else on the island. So one of them is the killer and nobody knows who it is. It's the best classic mystery that I think is out there, in my opinion. And the last one I will recommend for classics is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. This book is the epitome of summer romance. Yes, it's a classic. It is not contemporary by any means, but it takes place mostly in the summer. This is the original enemies to lovers. So many of the things that I've read in contemporary romance lately, I have noticed are elements and ideas coming from Jane Austen herself. She is the OG in romance writing. I loved this book so much, and I read it for the first time earlier this year. I also had seen the movies, and listening to the playlist of soundtrack in the background while I was reading this was just exactly what I wanted. I think that this would be a really great summer reading book. All right, the last category that I am going to talk about are actually books that I do not own physically. I have borrowed these from the library or just read them on my Kindle through the Libby app. I really enjoyed these and I think they would be great summer editions, so that's why I'm talking about them. First one is Killers of a Certain Age by Deanna Raybourn, and because I don't know physically, I think that that's the author's name. I hope I did not mess that up. Basically, we are following a group of friends who are all spies working for the government. Basically, they're in England, but I think it's like England's version of FBI, so MI5 or something like that. And there's a past timeline on how they got started with their work, but there's also the current timeline on how they are going on their last mission as old people before they all retire. And it is hilarious to me reading about old people being spies. I love that so much. Not only are you getting a good thriller element, but also you're getting some just funny stories, and you're gonna laugh, you're gonna cry, all the things in between. Really recommend this for the summer. The last book I'll talk about is The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I read all of the first 3 books when I was on a trip last year and binged through them all. They are great, fast-paced, fun reads for the summer. They're following a main character that I cannot remember her name for the life of me. Basically, she gets a letter from somebody random whose lawyer basically reaches out to her and says, hey, this guy died, you're inheriting everything. And she's like, what the heck? Like, I don't even know this guy. Why am I inheriting this huge estate when they have a whole family that probably deserves it more? She goes to the reading of the will and learns that she has to stay in this house for a certain amount of time in order to obtain what's rightfully hers in the will. So she forms relationships with the family. She's trying to figure out who these people are, and the man who passed away created games and adventures for her and them to go on to figure out what is actually happening, and it's just really fun. It's like playing a huge board game adventure but in real life and actually acting it out. If you like houses with secret passages and magical feeling elements without it actually being magic, I really recommend this. I think this would be great sitting by the pool or just on your back porch one summer night, getting deep into a great story. So that is all for my summer reading recommendations. I hope that you found some ideas. I try to talk about all the genres so that everybody from any reading background, any taste of reading could get something from this video. I love doing videos like this where I pick a theme, and this one it is summer reading, and give you all the books that I think you will love for your summer reading TBR. Let me know in the comments what your summer reading plans are. I would love to know if you have particular books you're wanting to read, if you have any books from the list that I just gave that you are going to add to your TBR. I would love to know what your thoughts are. I'm excited to continue sharing my reading journey with you. I would love for you to stick around by subscribing to my channel and liking the video if you did like it so that other people can find me. And that is all for today. So I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in my next video. Bye, friends.